Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 8th session in the Career Clinic Hackathon series, which has been running from October last year until January this year, the last session being next week, actually. This week, we're going to be focusing on how to hack time management. But before we start, if you don't already know me, my name's Stefan. I'm originally from the UK. I moved to Helsinki last August 2019. I'm currently the COO of the Shortcut. And as you can probably hear in my voice, I have a cold. So sorry if I'm really nasal. Thankfully, it's a conventional cold and not COVID, so nothing to worry about there. And lastly, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn following on from this presentation. I'm be more than happy to help you. Before we start, just make sure that you have your phone chargers and laptop chargers next to you so that you don't run out of battery. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat section of either Facebook or YouTube, depending on where you're watching this live stream from. And then just a reminder that this session is being recorded, which means that we're able to share it with you via email and via our social media channels after the session ends. Okay, I'm going to go straight into the agenda this week. So today, I'm going to look at who we are, the Shortcut, our community, how you can get involved, today's objective, then some time management hacks, which I hope you'll find useful, and then an opportunity for us to connect with one another. If we haven't already done so, then I'll open it up to any questions that you have. And there are some additional resources for later on, if you want to know more about this topic. Okay, so I'll just go through my usual spiel. So the Shortcut is the largest talent accelerator in the Nordics. So we equip talent, so people like you, with the skills and networks that you need to become an entrepreneur or work for a startup. We're owned by the Startup Foundation, which also owns companies like Slush, Junction, Maria01, and Wave Ventures. And the Shortcut itself is not-for-profit, which means that any profit we do make, we pump back into the business to best serve you, our community. And talking of our community, one of our core values, we have 6, is that we are for the people, by the people. So we support each other in our pursuit of employment, entrepreneurship, and giving back. It's very easy to get involved and stay connected with us. Like most companies, we're active on all of the mainstream social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But I'd recommend visiting our website and subscribing to our newsletter, because that's the one true source of information, and you'll stay up to date with everything that's going on at our organization. And just a reminder that all of our events and activities are free to join, so there's a very low barrier to entry. All right then, let's move on to the presentation proper. Today's objective is to walk you through some time management hacks to improve your efficiency, giving you more time to do the things you enjoy the most. So need I say more? So let's move straight into it. Okay, so hack number 1. So use a basic to-do list tool to plan your workload or your schedule. I'm sure a lot of you are already doing this, but if you're not, start. I've given you some examples. So there's Trello, which is a free service. Todoist also has a free service. Or you can use a good old-fashioned notebook if you're that way inclined. Absolutely no problem. But just having a to-do list tool is the best way to organize your work, ensuring you don't forget anything and that you meet deadlines. Simple, really. Hack number 2. Now, I would set up your to-do list as a personal Kanban board. So personal Kanban board is just a really fancy way of saying I'm going to split my tasks and my workload into 4 different categories or lists. So the first list, like on the left-hand side, would be like, the things that you need to do. Then the list next to that, to the right-hand side, is the tasks that you're currently doing. And to the right of that are the tasks that you've done. And then to the right of that are the lessons that you learned while carrying out the task. So you can find out more about personal Kanban in a blog post that I've shared in this presentation. But it's relatively straightforward. There's not more than what I've just really explained. But the benefit of using a personal Kanban is that it helps you visualize your work, and you're also able to limit the number of tasks you are doing, which I'm going to come on to in a second. Yes, talking of which, so limit the number of tasks on the doing list to 2 to 3 tasks a day. No more than that. And the reason is that it's more realistic. We can't often complete more than 2 to 3 tasks a day. As well as that, you avoid any unnecessary stress that you and you alone have put on yourself. So no one's telling you you have to do 5 or 10 or 20 tasks a day. A lot of the times it comes from yourself only. By putting 2 to 3 tasks there a day, you ensure that you do each task properly because you're avoiding the temptation to move on to the next one too quickly. And I remember when I first started using impersonal Kanban, and I'd have 5 or 6 tasks there, and it then became a race against the clock, and the actual quality of my work was quite severely reduced. Hack number 4. So if you're not sure which 2 or 3 tasks to put in your doing list for the day, then use the Eisenhower matrix to prioritize. I should have probably included a visual here to help you understand it, but it's basically just an urgency versus importance matrix. So you have urgency plotted on the x-axis, and the further you move along the x-axis, the more urgent the task is. Then you have importance on the y-axis, and the higher up the y-axis is the more important the task is. So if you plot all your tasks on this matrix, you want to focus on the ones that are in the top right-hand corner. So the ones that are the most urgent and the most important. Again, although you can't really see it because the formatting is quite bad on this slide, I'll fix that in a second. But more info about the Eisenhower matrix can be found in a blog post that I've shared with you. But it's just a really good way to actually visualize what's important and what you need to work on first. Hack number 5. So the Eisenhower matrix will give you a list of tasks that you should do in the day, but then you should pick and you should start with the biggest, the most challenging task out of the ones that you've selected. It's tempting to start with the small and easy ones to reduce the size of your to-do list. However, these tasks should be saved for when you're slightly more mentally fatigued. So research has found that repetitive and easy tasks should be done when you're tired. It makes sense, right? If you start doing them early in the morning, which is when your brain functions the most, you're going to have mentally fatigued by the time you come onto your big task, and it's going to take longer than it would have done if you'd started with your big task. And to add to that, if you don't start with the big or the most challenging one, you'll find that at the end of your day, it becomes very, very heavy, and it will add unnecessary stress. So that's my suggestion. There's an expression called "eat that frog," but I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that. And then, so you've got your tasks that you're doing that day. You've chosen to select the bigger one first, but it's really daunting and you're not sure how to tackle it. So break it down into smaller chunks. So one of the examples I've given here, very basic, is my big challenging task is to create a report for Steve. And you could break this down into 3 things. You could break it down into pull figures from database, create graphs and tables, create presentation to send to Steve. This is just a very basic example. Obviously, it's very different depending on what industry and in what area you work. But in project management, we call this technique managing in stages, which is just a fancy way of basically saying we're taking a big problem and we're making it into much smaller and much easier to complete problems. And it just overall becomes much more manageable. So if you're interested, it's called managing in stages, and it's a project management technique. Hack number 7, work in sprints. So for example, there are 2 kind of sprints that you can work in. You can work in a 45-minute sprint, then take 15 minutes off, and then repeat that throughout the day. Or you can work for 90 minutes, then take 30 minutes off and repeat. And the reason is that working in sprints with regular breaks leads to maximum productivity. So after every sprint comes like a 15 minutes rest to go and do something to unwind, to stop looking at your computer, to make yourself a cup of tea, maybe to go and send a few messages, or maybe just go outside for a little stroll to take the dog out, I don't know. But research has shown that the human brain can't focus more than this. So if you're finding yourself working in like 2-hour sprints, or 2-hour sort of sections, or 3-hour sections, you're not going to be very productive, and the task will take you longer than if you work in 45 minutes or 90-minute sprints. So do it, work in sprints, and also take a lunch break. Hack number 8, use a calendar to block book your doing tasks. A lot of us probably have an online calendar that we use, and even if you don't have a meeting planned for a particular time, like plot like calendar appointment slots for the tasks that you're going to do throughout the day. For example, 10 o'clock to 10:45, I'm going to pull the figures for Steve's report, the example I gave in the previous slide, or 2 previous slides. Then I'm going to have a 15-minute break, and then 11 to 11:45, I'm going to create the graphs and tables for Steve's report. Then I'll have another 15-minute break. It gives you an action plan for the day ahead, so you can see when you're going to be working on everything. But as importantly, it avoids other people booking meetings with you because they can visualize your calendar and they can see that it's full. So this allows you the time to get the important things done without being interrupted. Yes. Hack number 9, turn off, close other distractions. Honestly, if anything is urgent, someone will call you. To give you some examples, if you're working on a big challenging task, turn off your email, turn off WhatsApp for desktop. If you've moved over to Signal because of WhatsApp's privacy policies, then turn off Signal for desktop. If you're a member of a Slack channel or a Slack user workspace, turn it off, close it down, etc. Close anything that has push notifications. And the reason is that all of these tools that we use to communicate were built to distract you. They're meant to grab your attention. But if you fall victim to them, it takes your brain about 15 to 20 minutes to get refocused on the task you were just doing. So it's really not healthy. So as I said, I can't reiterate it enough, just turn it all off. Close all of the tabs on your computer so you're only left with the sort of window or tab that you're working on. Move your phone to the other side of the room, something like that. Having said that, I've got my phone here, I'm going to move it. Hack number 10, allow for some free time in your schedule. So I've been quite rigid. I've said you should use your calendar to book your time. I've said that you should work in 45-minute sprints. I said that you should have 2 to 3 tasks a day. I said that they should break those down. But also you need to add in a buffer, time in your schedule that's completely open, where you don't have any meetings and where you're not expecting to work on anything. And an example of this is that in a typical 8-hour day, leave an hour free or unplanned. And the reason is that ad hoc things come up all of the time. But also some of the tasks that you've assigned yourself might take longer than you think. So you've given yourself a buffer there. I should have said that in the why section anyway. But mainly it's to avoid not having the capacity to take on ad hoc things, because paradoxically, leaving some of your schedule unplanned means that you're actually planning for ad hoc tasks. A bit of a paradox. Okay, I've only got 2 more hacks left, I believe. Yes. Hack number 11, so record lessons learned. So in your personal Kanban board, which I think was hack number 2, I suggested that you create a list or a column called lessons learned. And you use this column to jot down anything that you learned while completing a task. Like maybe you learned that the task took longer than you expected. And therefore, next time you do it, you need to allow yourself more time. So record this in the lessons learned list and put it there. Next time you'll do the task, refer to that lessons learned list and make sure you plan accordingly. And it's because you're not going to nail it 100% of the time. It's almost impossible to sort of accurately predict how long things are going to take, especially if you get a random call or there are other factors. But next time you do the same task, you can look at your lessons learned list and build your daily schedule more accurately. And finally, plan for the next day at the end of each working day. And you can do this by following hacks 1 to 10. So when you come into work in the morning, or if you're not currently working and you open up your laptop first thing in the morning, you should know what you're going to do for that day because you planned it at the end of the previous day. And the reason why is that if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail and you're not as efficient or productive. So all quite basic, a couple of more fancy words there, but make sure you have a basic to-do list tool. I use Trello, it's very simple. Use the personal Kanban board to create your tasks and manage your workload. Limit yourself to 2-3 tasks a day. Use the Eisenhower matrix to prioritize which tasks you're going to do in that day. And then start with the biggest, most challenging one. Break that into smaller chunks. Work on it in sprints. Use your calendar to block book when you're doing that task to avoid distractions. Turn off all the other distractions from like push notifications on other systems or tools. And then finally, allow some free time in your schedule for any sort of ad hoc task, or if tasks take longer to complete than you expect. All right, wow, I think I got through that rather quickly. So now I want to move on to the networking session. So this is an opportunity for you to just write your name, maybe write your area of interest or expertise, and then just put your LinkedIn URL onto this Flinger board, which Hannah, who's moderating the session, should have sent in the chat function. So I'm going to go to that screen now. So if I go to Flinger here, you can see that you've got me, Stefan Cave, who's the CEO of the shortcut, and here's my LinkedIn profile. If you want to follow a similar format and we can all connect with one another, keep expanding our own networks and keep the conversation going about employment and what have you. So yeah, it's currently 10:46. So I'm going to give you until about 10:49, the next 3 minutes or so, just to write your name, your area of expertise, and provide your LinkedIn profile. And while you do that, I'm going to take a sip of chamomile tea. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for doing that. Thanks again, Ksenia. That's great. I know you came last week as well. Appreciate it. Just a couple more minutes. I should probably find something to fill the silence on the live stream. Yeah, maybe it's the last session in the career clinic next week, but maybe I can put on some background music or something to keep things moving and active. Just one more minute then. It doesn't look like we've got many watchers tuning in at the moment, but that's okay. If you're watching the recording of this, you can still add your name and area of expertise and your LinkedIn profile to this Flinger board and connect with people post-event. That's fine. Yes, no issues there. I'm going to move on because it looks like that's that, and yeah, I don't want to hold the silence for any longer, and it's 10:49, so it's fine. So let's go back to the presentation. We're now moving to the Q&A section. So if anyone has any questions based on that short presentation or not, Hannah?
Yeah, so I have one comment on here. What calendar do you use for block booking? Online or traditional paper calendar?
Yeah, so I use an online calendar. So I use Gmail as like my email provider. But I've also I also linked it to a tool called Calendly. So Calendly basically syncs with your Gmail calendar, and it's a like personal link that you can send to people to arrange meetings with you. But what it does is that it hides any time slots that you've booked in your calendar, so people can only book slots with you at the times that you're available. So yeah, I use Gmail and I link it with Calendly.
Fantastic. That is the only question that we have.
No worries.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you're interested in this, but you want to know a little bit more and go into a bit more detail, then you can. It's because this short session was built off the back of a bigger session called How to Manage Your Time at Home, which we gave back in June 2020. And that was by a guy called Laurent, who's an entrepreneur. You can find the presentation for that session and the live recording in this slide. And then finally, just thank you for joining us this morning. Please help us create better events in the future by completing the feedback form, which Hannah would have shared with you in the chat. And then just two more things. So our last session in the Hackathon series is next week, the 27th of January at the same time, 10:30 to 11:15. And we're going to focus on how to hack effective communication. So I'm just going to give you a few sort of tools that you can use to communicate, maybe by email, but also in person. And it's quite useful when you start networking, or if you have an interview, or if you're trying to just chat with people on LinkedIn and connect. And then finally, if you're a professional or a company and you want to collaborate with us, then you can. Just feel free to reach out to us on our social media channels, or send us an email to info@theshortcut.org. But yeah, that's it from me and Hannah today. Thanks very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully you can go outside and do some sledging or something before it all turns to slush. But cool. Catch you later.